Hello, and welcome to the Senior Care Channel. My name is George Roach. I'm an elder law and estate planning attorney with over 35 years experience in this field. Today, since it's a new year, 2013, we are going to be talking about some changes coming down the pike as far as community Medicaid and home care goes in the field of long-term care. And well, in another episode, in the future, we'll be talking about the use of some trust planning. But to sort of recap for our audience who has not tuned into previous episodes, when you think about it, there are really only two places in this world that you will ever need long-term care. You're either going to be at home in the community, or you're going to be in a nursing home. When you're home in the community, which is where everybody likes to be, either living independently or with somebody else, somebody's decided to move in with the children, all right, or move in with other family members, you always want to be in the community. We're all going to get there. It's just a matter of how and when. And as we grow old, it's a fact of life that sometimes we become ill, systems fail, organs fail. Just like any machine, parts wear out. Nowadays we have the replacement of hips and knees, and almost like the TV show The Bionic Man. And we have to provide. You have to provide for the fact that somewhere down the line, as we age, each and every one of us is going to need some long-term care in one form or another. Now, we always want to be at home if you can, but sometimes people just get so sick where they wind up needing a nursing home. So as I said, there's really only two places in this life you're going to be as you age. You're either going to be in the community or you're going to be at home. Now, how do we pay for this type of long-term care, whether you're in the community or you're in a nursing home? There's only two places you need it. There's only three ways to pay for it in our society. And they are very simply, number one, long-term care insurance. And maybe we'll do a whole program on the long-term care insurance issue in the future. But for now, if you don't have long-term care insurance, either because you can't afford it or you have a pre-existing condition, you're not healthy enough to get it, it's too prohibitive, the only other two ways you can pay for long-term care, whether you're at home in the community or in a nursing home, are privately from your nest egg, what you've saved up over the course of your lifetime, or somewhere down the line, either through good planning or no planning. You'll wind up spending every last dime you've saved up on your medical care, long-term care, until it's all gone, and then somebody will tell you, hey, now you are eligible for Medicaid. All right, Medicaid is simply taxpayer medical care. And for those of you viewing in other states other than New York, what I'm going to be talking about today is New York Medicaid law. I always think out of all the 50 states in this country, New York is the most liberal. There's that word again, the most liberal of all the states as far as things older people can do to protect their property, especially when you need long-term care. You can't do this stuff, what we do here in New York, in Florida or Arizona or any of these Sunbelt states. They have more or less for the healthy and the wealthy. But when people retire and they leave New York for whatever reason, one of the things they don't think about is what happens if I need long-term care in another state. And as I said, New York is very generous to older people as far as things they can do to protect their property. And we're going to talk about some of them during the course of this program. So if I'm in need of community care, I've had a stroke, I've fallen down and broken a hip, frail elderly women with osteoporosis, multiple sclerosis, any degenerative diseases that people get as they age. All of a sudden I realize I can no longer do what? All right? I can no longer perform what we call, the medical community calls them, what we call the activities of daily living. The activities of daily living. They're called the ADL skills. The ADLs. And what are they? They're the things that we generally, while we're healthy, we take for granted. we didn't give them a thought. For example, they are the ability to dress yourself, feed yourself, toilet yourself, mobility, getting up and out of a chair, in and out of a car, all right? Wash yourself, bathe yourself. Transference, we call that the ability to get up and out of a chair. All of a sudden, those things become very difficult if you've broken a hip, you've suffered a stroke, you're either partially or fully paralyzed. You can no longer perform these activities of daily living. And if you're home alone, it was quite a famous movie some years ago, Home Alone, but if you're home alone during the day, living independently, or let's say you're living with a child, and that child goes out to work every day for 8 hours and maybe has an hour commute in each direction, you're home alone anywhere from 6 to 10 hours a day or more. And if you have difficulty getting dressed, taking yourself to the bathroom, who's watching you, who's cooking you a meal, all right, you're at some serious risk, especially if you take another fall. Many times over the course of the time I've been in elder law practice, I've seen a senior citizen suffer a traumatic event, a fall. And the fall alone triggers a dementia. It triggers a downward slide, and the next thing you know, person is healthy on one day, and the next day they're in a nursing home. And it happens so quick, and everybody has the thought in the back of their mind, well, it's not going to happen to me, it always happens to the other guy. Well, that's what planning is about. Planning is saying, what does it mean to me if it happens to me? If I need long-term care at home, or if I need long-term care in a nursing home. For those of you sitting in the audience today, and you live in another state other than New York, what I would suggest is, if you're interested in that state's rules governing Medicaid and long-term care, you consult with either an elder law attorney from your local bar association, from the local state bar association. We have large committees of elder law attorneys now. Or you can contact the national organization, which is called the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. NAELA, we call them, N-A-E-L-A. They're located in Vienna, Virginia. If you are somewhat tech savvy and have a computer, you can probably just Google them, N-A-E-L-A, and you come up with the whole list of elder law attorneys in your state. It's very important that you get the advice from an experienced, and I put the emphasis on experienced, elder law attorney in your state, because the Medicaid law differs from state to state to state. And as I said previously, New York is in fact the most generous. All right. So I'm at home. I've suffered a stroke. I'm partially or fully paralyzed. I've fallen down and broken a hip. I've had a replacement. Who is going to take care of me while I'm at home alone? Because you always want to stay home. You're always better off in the community. And we have some changes coming down the pike here in New York. First of all, what I like to call, you got to separate in your mind, and we talked about this in a previous program, separate at-home care in the community from nursing home care. And the rules are vastly different, number one. The big difference being, and I just want to reiterate, everybody that I talked to over the period of time knows that back in 2006, the look-back period on the transfer of assets to qualify for Medicaid, which is simply taxpayer medical care, which you get by virtue of being, quote, poor enough, all right? The look-back period in 2006 went from 3 years to 5 years. It is a 5-year look-back period on the transfer of assets. What most people and most lawyers don't realize is that 5-year look-back period on the transfer of assets to become poor enough only applies to nursing homes. It does not apply to community Medicaid. All right? Does not apply to community Medicaid. There is no look-back period. All right? What does that mean? There's no prohibition on the transfer of assets to become poor enough. Now, when are you poor enough? Here in the state of New York, for this year, 2013, an individual is considered poor enough to qualify for Medicaid, taxpayer medical care, to pay for their home care or pay for their nursing home, it's the same level of poor enough. You can only have two things left to your name. You can have $14,400, that's the new figure this year, $14,400 in what they call countable assets and resources, bank accounts, stocks and bonds, money you have saved up, all right? And the second thing you can have is a prepaid funeral, all right? You're entitled to put money away in what they call an irrevocable pre-needs burial account at a local funeral home. So I often advise my clients that when it comes time for Medicaid, you can take care of a real headache simply by prepaying your funeral. I tell people you just waltz into a local funeral home, wherever you decide you want to make those arrangements, and you simply tell the funeral director, it's Medicaid time for my mother, my father, if the kids are making the arrangements, I have to prepay the funeral. They'll know exactly what you're talking about because they hear it every day, and they sit down with you and they itemize all of your funeral expenses. You simply write them out a check and it gets deposited in the irrevocable funeral account, and you've taken care of a real headache for people when the time comes. So $14,400 in countable assets and resources, excluding your home, because your home is a residence, it's an exempt asset, and the prepaid irrevocable funeral. Okay, those are the two things you can have and be considered poor enough to qualify for taxpayer medical care, Medicaid, here in the state of New York. Now, for community Medicaid purposes, we call it community Medicaid simply because you are not in a nursing home. Going back to the two places you're going to need it, you're either in the community or you're in a nursing home. Okay, so while you're at home, and people always want to be at home, people are more comfortable at home, they're relaxed, the surroundings are familiar, all right? It's uncomfortable sometimes, but I want to be at home by all costs. Well, that's what we try to do. We try to keep that older person in their residence for whatever it takes. Sometimes it's difficult to do, but we try our best. And it's a question of simply getting as much care that Medicaid will pay for in that home. And what most people don't realize is there's a struggle, a tug of war going on between the government, which pays for the home care, and the client who needs more hours. And that struggle goes on. The government obviously is trying, since it's taxpayer medical care, since the government is trying to get away with as little care as possible, we, as elder law attorneys, we advocate for as much care as possible. And that's the struggle that's going on. You need to get enough care to be able to stay at home. Sometimes it's impossible to get a 24/7 situation where you can get care around the clock. Sometimes we can get what they call a live-in, an aide to come and stay with you for 13 hours a day. They live in your home. All right, Medicaid pays for that. And as I said, that whole area is called community Medicaid, and it's in a process of change right now. To see where it's changing, I just want to give you some of the rules for community Medicaid now. Number one, as we said, there is no 5-year look-back period. They cannot penalize you for transferring assets to qualify for community Medicaid. That's important to remember. Now, that means if you have any kind of a nest egg saved up, house, bank accounts, stocks and bonds, investments, second home, boat, car, since there are no restrictions on transferring assets, you are permitted to save your nest egg when it comes to community Medicaid. You are permitted to actually give it away. You can transfer it to somebody else. That's why we call it no transfer rules. Well, people say, who do I give it to? Personally, I don't really care. You can give it to a spouse, you can give it to the kids, you can give it to a charity. Importantly, the gold standard as far as transfers of assets go in estate planning is we use a device called an irrevocable trust, all right, which is simply a lockbox. And we'll do a whole program on trust planning at a future date. But you put assets in an irrevocable trust, the transfer, they cannot penalize you for that for community Medicaid purposes. And as long as you sit out the 5-year period, you're home free and clear. God forbid you need a nursing home in the future. All you have to do is stay out of a nursing home for 5 years, and you're home free and clear. And your assets are protected. Sometimes with the irrevocable trust, you can have what they call, you can have your cake and eat it too. Even if you pass away, the irrevocable trust avoids probate, and all of your assets pass to your heirs without having to go to court. That's why we consider it the gold standard as far as estate planning goes. But getting back to community Medicaid, one, there are no transfer rules, so I can protect my nest egg. That's wonderful, all right? Everything I've worked my entire life for, I don't have to spend down on my home care until it's all gone, until I become poor enough. And the sad part about this is many people oftentimes don't realize that there's a difference between the two types of long-term care, and they wind up spending all that money down when they didn't have to. So it's very important to get the word out to other elderly people who may not be watching this channel, to tell them, you better watch the senior care channel and get clued in onto the rules of the game here, so you can protect your nest egg, what you've saved up over the course of your lifetime. Now, nest egg aside, that's the asset side of the coin. As we all know, we also have an income side to the coin, all right? Helps us live from day to day. What is the income for most older people? Well, when I look at clients many times, basically Social Security is income, and of course pension, if you are lucky enough to have one. A lot of times that's about it for most senior citizens, but certainly you can have any interest income, dividend income, bond income, rental income, gambling income, all right? But there are other sources of income, but for our purposes today, for most older people, it's strictly Social Security and a pension. Now, what does Medicaid do with your income? Little different rule. Now, Medicaid says, look, we can't stop you from giving away your nest egg, transferring it out to anybody you choose. Spouse, irrevocable trust, doesn't make a difference. We cannot penalize you for that because you're applying for community Medicaid, not a nursing home. Now, however, Medicaid says, whatever your income is per month, Social Security and a pension, they'll total it up. Medicaid says you only get to keep the magic number for this year, 2013, here in the state of New York. You get to keep $820 per month from your income to live on. Good luck trying to do that. I often say, you can't even kennel a dog for $820 a month. All right? So what happens to the balance of your income as far as community Medicaid goes? The balance of your income, everything above $820, is considered your Medicaid overage. That's the term of art that they give to that extra money. Everything but $820, the balance is called your Medicaid overage. Now, what happens to that money? In the past, prior to some changes in the law, you were required to kick that extra money in. Medicaid made a budget for you, and you had to pay it to the home care agency. It was your contribution. You didn't have much choice in the matter. It was required, and it was almost like a copay. And people said, well, wait a minute. I can't afford to give that money to the home care agency because I can't live on $820 a month. I have rent, I have a mortgage, taxes, electric, utilities, groceries, insurance, cable. I need that money to live on. And in the past, Medicaid said, we don't really care. You have to make the choice. And it was really a Hobson's choice between your medical needs on the one hand, the home care, and your living expenses on the other. You didn't have a choice. You had to give up that money. And probably the only time that actually worked was where the senior citizen who needed the home care was living with the children, living in the household of another. Then they could afford to give up the overage money, and their rent became $820 a month. All right? And that was the situation for many, many, many years, up until about 4 or 5 years ago. Now we have a method of getting that extra money, that overage money, back so you can live on it. And the way we do that is really, it's called a pooled income trust. And we simply tell the people, you join a charity that runs a pooled income trust. All right? Now, there are about 7 or 8 different charities out there that run the pooled income trust. The one I like to use, we use them, they're very good at it, they've been doing it for a while. It's called NYSARC, NYSARC.org. If you want to look them up on, they have a website. They've been around since 1949, and it stands for New York State Association for Retarded Children. Now, you do not have to be retarded to join NYSARC. All you have to be is in need of community Medicaid. You go to that website, you can print out 2 documents. One is a joinder agreement. Join the club. You're joining NYSARC. And I believe the current fee is about $300 to join NYSARC. All right? Open to everybody, not a problem. And by the way, the only time you're doing this is when you need community Medicaid. There is no need to do this ahead of time, to sign up prior. It's only when you need community Medicaid. That's going to get back that extra income. Now, the second document you print out happens to be what they call a medical evaluation form. You simply take that to the doctor, either mom or the children take that medical evaluation form to the doctor. The doctor fills it out, and essentially he says, you are disabled. You are disabled. And if you've broken a hip, you have dementia, any number of things where you need a home health aid, you are in fact disabled. That's why you need the home health aid. It's almost a slam dunk. All right? Once you join NYSARC, you have the joinder agreement and the disability form is filed, what happens? Remember we talked about the overage money, the Medicaid overage, everything, all of your income over and above the $820 a month you're allowed to keep. That money, instead of getting sent to the home care agency like it used to in the past, now gets sent to the charity. You send it to NYSARC. And what does NYSARC do with it? NYSARC takes that money and they put it in a special bank account for you. That bank account they put it in is called a pooled income trust. That's what it's called. Now don't get confused. Think of it in your mind's eye as an egg carton. You have 1 carton of a dozen eggs. Each egg has its own little individual place in the carton. That's exactly what the pooled income trust is. Your bank account has its own individual little place, and that's where your overage money goes every month. Now, once your money is in the pooled income trust, then you simply sit down and you make out a list. You write out a list of your fixed monthly expenses, whatever it costs you per month to live. Your rent, your mortgage, taxes, electric, utilities, groceries, insurance, cable, telephone, bingo. We start telling people, start buying your groceries on a credit card. Because you pay with the credit card, you get a receipt, you bought your groceries, you take that receipt and you send it up to NYSARC. All right? You take your electric bill, you send it up to NYSARC. Your telephone bill, your rent bill. All right? What does NYSARC do when they get your bills? They simply pull out their checkbook, open it up, and they pay your bills with the money you gave them, the overage money. All right? That's what they pay your bills with. Again, they're not going to let you live beyond your means if that's what you've been used to, they'll only pay to the extent of whatever money you gave them, and they'll pay your bills with it. So when you think about it, Medicaid doesn't really trust you enough to pay your own bills. But they'll let you keep $820 a month, send the balance to the charity, and they'll let the charity pay your bills for you. So all NYSARC really becomes is a third-party payor of your bills. All right? They'll trust NYSARC to pay these bills, but not you. But you still have $820 a month to do whatever you like with. All right? And that's how we get back that extra money so you can stay in the community. All right? You can meet your living expenses. And it's a recent development. It wasn't always the case, as I said in the past. You were stuck living on the $820 a month. But it's what you can do to get Medicaid to pay for the home care, the home health agency, the home health aide to come in and help you with these activities of daily living. Feed you, dress you, light housework, that type of thing. Because you always want to be at home. Now, there are some changes coming down the pike. As government does, you should be aware the Medicaid system, or Medicaid in and of itself, is getting out of the payment of home care business. They don't want to pay for it anymore. So what they're doing very simply is they are contracting out to various agencies. We call them long-term managed care agencies, LTMC or MCOs, managed care organizations, and the managed care organization will be providing the care. But to be able to get the care from the long-term managed care or the MCO, you must be Medicaid eligible. You must first have an open community Medicaid case, all right? Whatever it takes. And you can still use NYSARC for those bills. The problem as we see it, because it's just recent and it's being phased in here in New York in the various counties. It started in New York City and it's working its way around to the various other counties of the state. And there are 62 of them here in New York. Very simply, each agency contracts with the state to provide this care. The state says, we are going to pay you per head. It's not going to be based on the amount of care the patient receives. It's going to be based on what they call capitation, per head. So let's say, for argument's sake, the state says we're only going to pay $10,000 per head for an individual. All right? How does the agency make money? Well, the agency looks to enroll people who need very little care, maybe only 3 or 4 hours a day. All right? They're going to make money on those people. However, the people who are at a disadvantage are the people who are going to need a lot of home care. Right? The people, high-hour people, who need maybe a live-in 13 hours to 24/7. Those are the people they're going to lose money on. So it's been seen before. Agencies have a tendency, and it's simple economics, to cherry-pick the people who need less care as opposed to the people who need more care. And again, this is a brand new system. It is just being phased in. There are rules and regulations in place. It changes somewhat the rights you have as an older person under the old Medicaid system, where Medicaid paid, like they call it, a fee for service. All right? Medicaid paid for these hours that you needed the aid. If your hours were reduced or terminated at any point, you had the right to an immediate fair hearing. Very important, immediate fair hearing on the issue with aid to continue while the fair hearing was pending, so you didn't lose the home care. That's going by the boards. Now what happens is, with these new agencies taking place, these managed care organizations, these MCOs, you're going to be stuck with a procedure we call in the law of exhausting your administrative remedies. There are internal appeals. You have to appeal to the company first before you can go outside the company, and you have to exhaust all of your what their internal appeals and external appeals before you are entitled to a fair hearing at the Department of Social Services. So, like any new system, there are bugs that are going to have to be worked out, and the pluses and minuses remain to be seen. But that's what's going to happen. Agencies are going to be providing the care that used to be paid for by Medicaid, because Medicaid is now paying the agencies per head. And as government says, they think managed care is the way to go. It's going to be the system. There's not much we can do to change that. We're just going to have to monitor it and be as forceful an advocate as we can on our client's behalf to get that elderly person as much care as they really need to maintain them at home. Right? And of course, in the previous shows we've done, if you can no longer stay at home, ultimately you will wind up needing a nursing home at some point, and the managed care organization will be dealing with that issue too. All right. So for all intents and purposes, be aware these are the new numbers for this year, 2013. I want to thank you for tuning in, and all my best, and age with grace. Thank you.